Hey, good afternoon and welcome to the Navy Dad channel. Today we are going to talk about the second most important thing to any parent with a child at boot camp. The second most important thing, second only to graduation, is the phone call from your recruit. So I'm going to try to break it down into three components. The first component is going to deal with the mechanics of our side and the questions that we have as parents. How many calls are they going to get? When are they going to come? How long can they talk? Can they call multiple people? Things of that nature. The second part is we're going to talk about the backside of the issue. What does it look like on the recruit side? Because if you understand what goes on the recruit side, it helps kind of answer a lot of questions that we different. So what is my experience with this topic? Well, my experience is that of a parent who's gone through it with my first son from beginning to end, with the first phone call on night of arrival, all of the phone calls in between, all the way up to the phone call prior to graduation, where you're kind of working out some details. The second aspect of that experience would be with my second son, and we're now in week 4. So we're going through and we're experiencing it again. And then the third aspect of it would be after the fact, retrospective conversations with my son, trying to look at things and gain some knowledge of what it looked like on his side from his perspective. So that in a nutshell is kind of my experience on the topic, just trying to share. So let's dive into that first nuts and bolts topic. The questions of how many phone calls are they going to get to make? How long will they be able to talk? When will the calls come? Can the calls be divided amongst multiple loved ones? Well, I can only speak to my experiences. There's a lot of but-fors and variables that go into the answers here that I may or may not have experienced. But what I do know is that the typical average number of phone calls is probably going to be 3 to 4 phone calls other than the night of arrival phone call. So could be other extenuating circumstances where they get to make an additional phone call. They could lose phone calls. The duration of the phone call is going to be anywhere from 15 minutes, I've heard, all the way up to an hour. But again, there's a lot of variables that are going to dictate what the duration of that phone call is. And we'll get into some of that. When are the phone calls going to come? Typically, the phone calls are going to come on Saturdays. Sometimes they will extend on to Sunday for a number of different reasons. Can they divide the calls? Yes. There are situations where divorce situations, mom lives here, dad lives there, dad's at home, mom's at work. I want to divide the call between my parents and my girlfriend or boyfriend, etc. Yes, they absolutely can divide the calls up. That's not a problem. So the next part of this is what I call the process. And what I mean by the process is, what is the process that the recruits go through as they march from their ship down to the call center? My understanding is that the RDC of the division will schedule a 60-minute block of time for his division to call home. Now, when he sets that up, that 60 minutes is a initial ceiling of maximum amount of time to call. The actual time that the recruits get to call is going to be largely dependent upon how they're working together as a team, how they're performing as individuals, and if they're not working together as a team, they're going to get time reduced. If they're not performing as an individual and there's disciplinary issues involved, that individual can have their time reduced. Now, the RDC will call the division down to muster when their scheduled time comes up. If they're delayed, they're not working together, they're not ready to muster, not everybody's present, all of that can lead to a significant delay in time, as much as 60 minutes down to as little as 15 minutes of time to talk. Now, that may sound a little bit on the brutal side, but really, you got to think about what they're trying to accomplish. They're trying to get them to work together as a team. And that time of talking to their family is the currency that they have to work with at that stage of boot camp. So that's a reality. It's going to get better, but but that's what it is. So you can expect to have anywhere from 15 minutes to 60 minutes with your individual. Now, if there's anybody that happens to be on watch during the time that the division is getting to call home, they will make time for that individual to also get to call home, but it may be the next day. So you may be seeing a bunch of parents posting on Facebook that Division 337, we're getting calls, it was glorious, and your child doesn't call. That doesn't mean that they're not going to get to call. They may be on watch at the time, and their call may come later that day or even the next day. So don't be surprised if that turns out to be true. So the next part of this is what to expect. First and foremost, you're going to need to expect to get a phone call that says payphone or from Waukegan, Illinois. Mine said payphone. Irregardless, be prepared to take that phone call when you see that come across your caller ID. Second, you probably need to be really prepared to have a highly emotional phone call. They're going to be exhausted. They're going to be homesick. They may be physically sick. They may be all of the above. It's going to be a rough phone call. It's going to be a short phone call. There's not going to be a whole lot of detail talking about what they're doing. It's going to be talking about how they're feeling. So the calls will get better, but you got to understand the point of this phone call at this stage of boot camp is they're going to be broken down, and that's a necessary process they will go through before they get built back up. As the next phone calls come in, you're going to see that they're a little bit more positive. They're going to be feeling better. They're going to be talking about what they're accomplishing and what they're doing and who they're meeting and so on and so forth. But that first phone call is going to be the toughest of them all. So be prepared for that. The phone calls will get longer as they go on, as they learn to work as a team more. And at the very end, they're just going to be so glad that they're at the final step in preparation for graduation, and there'll be a lot of talk about plans and reservations and what they're looking at and preparing for A school, and a lot of excitement in those last phone calls. So it's going to be a wide range of emotions, from being broken down to being elated at the end that they're approaching the finish line. So I hope all of this helps. If you found it useful, please like, subscribe, and share. If you had a different experience or a different story, by all means, leave me a comment down in the comments section. I would love to hear it. And until next time, thanks for watching the Navy Dad channel.